A Court of Fairies and Fiction. Akafaf Girls Podcast. Hosts Mel Liv and Aka. A bookish theory and discussion podcast for the Akatar, Crescent City, and Tug series, as well as other romantasy books. Guest episode: Night Court Culture with Antoinette.
Okay, we're good.
All right.
Hi again.
Hi. Oh,
Hi
I'm so happy
again.
to be here. Hi.
More hijinks with Antoinette.
Yes, and hopefully less technical issues and I'm glad that you're actually doing it this time, because if I proved everything, it's that I have no idea what I'm doing on technology.
I was like, oh, this whole chunk got cut off.
I don't even know where it went. It's just existing somewhere in the cloud.
Somewhere in the cloud. I don't know.
It's awful.
But anyways, we welcome you back, and you welcome me back, because, different podcasts.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm so glad that you're here. People really liked our interview. My aunt listens to the podcast, and she was like,
"That's so
that was really," but she doesn't read the books.
Oh.
I'm like, well, that's good. But it's very exciting. But when
I got the same mic as you.
Oh my gosh, look at that. Okay.
That's why my audio is good now.
I love
Actually,
this
Olivia got it for us as a late Christmas present. It was awesome.
Right, you were telling me about that last time too. The last time we left off, we were talking and it got cut off.
Mm-hmm.
But so there was this satanic cult in Wales. It was called the Kidwelly Sex Cult, which sounds crazy, but so I know. And
people know where we're going with this.
Yeah, right.
See in our content.
I listened to the whole episode on the Red Handed podcast, and if you're into true crime, definitely check out that podcast. They're excellent. They're not American, so sometimes I like that foreign, input into things. It's just very interesting.
Yeah,
but the Kidwelly Sex Cult was ran by a man named Colin Batley, who would lure single moms into his cult and not only start a sexual relationship with the mothers, but eventually with the children. And when I was listening to this, there was a lot of similarities between Colin Batley, the leader of the cult, and our favorite shadow daddy bat boy, Rhysand.
Rhysand.
For instance, he would brand his members with tattoos, notably eye tattoos. And I'm like, oh man, where have I seen that before?
God.
Right? And he would make them be, quote, whores, right? Like this was something that we saw Rhysand do with Feyre, right? Like the weaponization of sexuality.
Yes.
And then the interesting thing is that he winds up accidentally getting one of his members pregnant. And she goes on to write a whole book. Her name is Abigail. And I don't know if we actually know her last name, because I think she was a minor at the time. So it might be like hidden in the documents or something.
Confidential or something.
Right. She says that becoming a mother was actually his unknowing downfall, because, a mother's love, she wanted to get out of the cult now that she had a child. And once she was out of the cult, she was able to step back and realize that she was being mentally manipulated and controlled by him. And I'm like, once again, this is Rhysand. Like, did Sarah J. Maas look into Colin Batley before she
right?
Batley? Like a bat boy.
Yeah, right.
It's just all there.
But also we were on the podcast, we were throwing around this idea that, and it might be even in the Cassian interview, but we were throwing around this idea that if Rhys, like we talked about a little bit last time, is actually Valg, for all of you who have read Tog, and he's getting more unhinged, that if he blows up or does something out of pocket as his Valg or whatever, because Feyre doesn't really know about it, will she actually put Nyx first before her mate? And with Sarah, I feel like there's a little bit of a theme. It's not really a spoiler, but maybe a little spoiler for Crescent City, if you don't mind spoilers. But there's this character in Crescent City, I'm not going to tell you who it is, because you'd never guess while you're reading it anyway, who does all these horrible things, and it basically turns out that they were doing it to protect their children. Like, nobody knew they had children. No, like, they were hidden for years. They were adopted out to keep them safe, so they didn't have custody of them or anything. And so basically, Sarah kind of already has this theme of, putting your children before anyone else, because one of those characters were basically kind of like, I don't know, they kind of remind me of Rhys Under the Mountain when he says, "Oh, I'm doing it for my people. Oh, I'm doing it for my people." So they did a lot of kind of bad things, and they got themselves in a very Amarantha-like situation, actually, with the creep and all this stuff. And it just turned out that they were killing people for these people and doing all this bad stuff. And it was like, it was just to keep them from realizing they had kids or like tracking down their kids. And so I was like, I really would love to see if Feyre could be that kind of mother. Like, not technically do awful stuff for Nyx, but like if her mate, his father, threatened, his safety or something, even by accident, would she put Nyx above Rhys? And I don't know if I have the answer for that. I don't know if Sarah's going to be like, oh, the mother's love is going to trump the mate bond, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good question because the mate bond is supposed to be like this special bond, right? That like is unbreakable and is like a connection
bigger
beyond
than
soulmates.
marriage.
Right, right. Now, what's scary is that historically, like if we look at the other mates, like there was even this part where like we know that Rhysand's parents did not like him.
I was just gonna say that, yeah.
And even though they were mates and they hated each other, they couldn't separate because they were mates.
Yeah.
And Tamlin has that part too about where he talks about how his mother, even though, because they were mates and she wound up loving him, even though he became a tyrant, she was never able to
she wouldn't speak
to him, right?
She wouldn't speak an ill word about him.
And she knew that, like, I guess Daddy Spring, like whatever Tamlin's dad name. Do we even know what his name was?
No,
I don't think so.
Nobody has names.
Right. Like she knew that this guy was taking her kids, Tamlin,
Tamlin, her youngest baby.
Right, like to Hybern's camp, where Amarantha definitely was,
did something.
Doing something, right?
Diddled.
Like, right. So that does really concern me. Now, I do hope that Feyre somehow breaks that sort of
the cycle,
generational trend, right? Break the cycle, right? And I'm wondering, now that we're kind of talking this out, I wonder if that is what we're going to see her human heart be capable of.
Exactly.
Because a mother's love is very, like, and I'm married. I love my husband. He's my best friend. And we, we're
so
Catholic. We have a whole thing, together. We're in a covenant, right? But like your children are special. Like there's nothing that I wouldn't do to protect my children, even from, not that my, no one on this podcast,
but even from like their father,
Absolutely. Like, so I'm hoping that there is that part of Feyre that is still human and hasn't completely submitted to the primal mate bond, right?
Yeah.
That's a really scary question.
But then there's the twist of the Daemati stuff too.
Oh, that whole thing.
Can a mother's love pull someone out of a Daemati thing? Like if he was actually in her mind using his Daemati powers, if something happened to Nyx, would that snap her out of it?
That's a really good question. I don't know how it wouldn't. Like, there's times when like you're a parent, and like again, everyone knows that I've had neurovirus with my kids a few weeks ago. Like, I could be sick as a dog. The baby got sick, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I was snapped out of it. Right? Like, so. Like, I think that it's almost primal. Like, I know we talk about the mate bond being primal.
Yeah.
It's actually very primal how a mother.
But it's like a more like soul thing.
Right.
Right.
So that's a really good question. Just going back to the whole Daemati thing in general, man, I can rant about this for days, but he's inherently an unreliable and untrustworthy character because he has this capability. He has this complete unchecked power.
Yeah.
We really don't know what that guy's motivations are or what he's capable of doing. So,
I know that there's Feyre and Nyx, but then I was thinking, okay, we went over Rhys's parents, we went over Tamlin's parents, but then I was like, there's also Lady A. And yes, she's also being abused, but all of her sons grew up with Baron like that, being tortured by him. And I don't know we don't really know anything that goes on deep into the Autumn Court.
Right.
But I don't know if, he has some kind of, not really thrall on her, but maybe it's like kind of like a Faebane thing or like a Bloodbane thing or like something where she couldn't stop it, because we know that she's from a very powerful line. And we know that he bought her to be his wife because of that.
You're bringing up something that I think is interesting and we never really explore, because I feel like, mate bonds are so rare, but everybody has a mate. But Baron's not with a mate, right? Because Lady A and
they're just married.
So what is the power of marriage in, like, for Faye? Because they're not mates, so like there's not that connection. But there's still like overarching patriarchal kind of what do they call
that? Rhys says that I forget if we brought this up last time. Maybe we did. I don't remember. But Rhys says that Rhys, Tamlin. It was book 1. It wasn't Rhys. It was Tamlin. Tamlin tells Feyre because she asks about the High Fae and all this stuff. And she says, oh, so you guys do get married or whatever. And he says, yes, most High Fae marry, but there are also mate bonds. They're super rare and they trump a marriage. Later down the line, when Rhys is talking about the mate bond, like in terms of Elaine and Lucien and all of that and the rejection and all of that, he said that like there have been married couples who then found their mates, and then basically the two males would kind of duel it out, see who died.
Right, especially in the Autumn Court. That was like custom, right?
Yeah, that the blood duel, yeah. And so the mate would kind of go mad until basically the female would accept them because they thought that they were their property. I don't know.
You like mating bonds?
Huh?
You like mating bonds?
I do, but it depends on the person.
Okay.
For me, it depends on the person and their personal morality. Like, I have an issue with Rhysand.
Yeah, well.
and Nessian, which, again, I'm not going to go into that whole thing because people know I don't think they're real mates. But yeah, it's not that you can't have issues, but it's more that it shouldn't be something like held over your head or like trapping you in a way.
Yeah, did we talk about this last time where it's like, it could be a
little.
Story? Right. Like, that's my issue, is that it's just the lack of autonomy. Like you just said, the males go so crazy because they think that you're their property. Like, what? I'd be like, bro, absolutely not. Leave me alone.
But you also have to think of like when they realize this, like even the males, just talking about the males right now, like you realize that you're mated to this lady who's already married, right? And what is your reaction? Like, oh shit, guess I'm gonna lose my mind and turn into this animal.
Right.
Like, yeah. Like, they have no choice in that either.
That's one of the reasons I actually have this hypothesis that Feyre and Tamlin were actually mates. Because everyone's like, oh, I think his mate was Amarantha. He went crazy.
I fucking hate that.
I'm like, he didn't go crazy. He had PTSD like everybody else. And he really only goes crazy once Feyre leaves him. And like, Rhysand was willing to let another male marry his mate. He wasn't going crazy. Like, right? Like, when I think
it's
of like
weird.
When I think of someone being like feral, right? Like crazy. Hamlin's literally hanging out in the woods, okay?
Yeah.
Like in beast mode. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm like, this seems
That's why I'm like, did Sarah write it this way on purpose? Because there are definitely some moments where like Rhys, like Under the Mountain, where like Rhys roars for her and then he feels the whatever and screaming. But then there's like, he doesn't show up. We went through this last time, but he doesn't show up when she's being attacked at the Highburn camp. He's totally chill with her being attacked by the Weaver and the Adder and all these.
Go back to Spring. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if that was your mate, wouldn't you fight? And like, he's the most powerful High Lord. So like, wouldn't you have beaten?
He almost let her drown. Oh, I couldn't sense that you were in distress. He says that.
I think that Tamlin is actually. He doesn't even know how powerful. Like, I think that, and I think, like, we don't even. And Tamlin wasn't like trained. Does Tamlin even know the capabilities of his power? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
And Rhys says something, and this is actually because I've been reading a little bit of Crescent.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing that the King of Autumn says about the horn. They're looking for the horn, looking for this horn.
Yeah.
And he's like, symbols have power because we give them power, right? And it's actually somewhere in this notepad I have, but. My whole thing is if Rhysand keeps saying he's the most powerful and no one's questioning it.
Fine, whatever. Believe what you want.
Right. Like the Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean? Like no one questions the man behind the curtain. So you kind of just go along with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But meanwhile, Tamlin, I love those videos where everyone's like creeped out and they're like, Tamlin could be anybody. Like
I love that. But honestly, he's not. He's literally,
I don't think he is. I don't think he is. I think
one, he doesn't have the energy, and two, he doesn't give a fuck enough.
No, yeah. I'm like, it's a fun thing to think about, but I genuinely don't think that he and Tamlin switch and he's actually Elaine's bait. Like, I'm like,
that's so stupid.
There's no motive is my problem. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, you're just these are just theories for the sake of theory. And listen, I spew theories.
Whatever,
like crazy,
fun. Go
but
crazy.
I'm like, this doesn't even make sense.
I have a quote. I'm gonna pull it up. I put it on the podcast page. It's a theory reel. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but there is a reel that I did, and it goes back to the fact that you said, what if like Tamlin's actually his mate and all of that stuff? Here it is. Here's the quote. And this is from the dining room scene in book 1, where he had just gone into Feyre's mind mind you, and she's trying not to scream in the claws or whatever. Right. And it says, "Let her go." Tamlin's face was twisted with such feral rage that it struck a different, deeper chord of terror in me. If it's any consolation, Rhysand confided to him, she would have been the one for you, and you might have gotten away with it. A bit late, though.
Doesn't he say something similar to Tamlin? Is it like not when they're with Hybern, but when he's like, she could have been yours, Tamlin? He
something
says something
like that. Yeah,
right. Like, so he like, does he even know? Like, and this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Is that like Rhys just says the most incriminating shit like ever? Like, you said
nobody
that
bats
out
an eye.
loud.
Bats an eye.
And speaking of things that Rhys says, like, and this is gonna be on TikTok, and I know I was talking to you about it. I did a deep dive into chapter 54 of Akamab. Yeah. He contradicts himself
all the time. Like all the time.
In that chapter alone, like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Bad. He
Bad.
says,
he can't keep the story straight. That's why.
No, he can't. He was like, I watched her slaughter Jurian, and then I heard his screams later on. And I was like, wait a minute, you just said that she slaughtered him. What do you mean he's back at the camp? Like, he said that. And then he has this whole thing about when, and this goes back to that dining room scene, when he said, I have the quote somewhere, but I had Feyre's mind. I was holding her mind, and I asked her what her name was, and she said Claire. But I knew that actually wasn't her name because, I had her mind.
And he's like, I didn't know Claire was real.
Later on, I thought that you made up Claire's name. And I'm like, I thought you were in her mind. What do you mean?
Okay, I literally say that all the time. I go, there is no goddamn way that he didn't know Claire was real. He was in her head.
Nope. Hold on.
When she thought, oh, what's my neighbor's name?
Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, what is he talking about? He's not making any sense right now.
None. None. And then when he's like, oh, I did everything to protect Valaris. And down the line, he says, oh, Valaris has been hidden since its inception 5,000 years ago by my ancestor. Dude, nobody knew about it then. What were you protecting?
It's awful. It's
an
really,
idea
really awful.
that nobody had? Like, I don't understand. And then this is the, okay. All right, here it is. Yeah, so against my volition, my body straightened, every muscle going taut, my bones straining, magic but deeper than that, power that seized everything inside me and took control. Even my blood flowed where he willed it. I couldn't move, an invisible talon-tipped hand scraped against my mind, and I knew one push and who I was would cease to exist.
That's awful. That's like
crazy.
He says in Akamaf too, I wanted to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
What? I thought you couldn't hurt your mate.
Yeah. And then this is the next scene where she's with Tamlin in, I think, her bedroom or something. And she obviously didn't feel like eating that night. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she says his voice was hoarse and empty. It's fine. I lied. Clenching the sheets in my hands. If I thought too long about it, I can still feel the claw-tipped caresses of Rhysand's power scraping against my mind. And he wasn't there. I'm like, he took her mind. Right.
Let me ask you a question. Something I was analyzing.
Yeah.
This is an Akamaf, but we're talking about Rhys contradicting himself and being a scuzzball. This is on page 521, chapter 54. And he said that when he started to have dreams of her. And he said, I dreamt of this beautiful hand. And quote, a person who had enough safety to paint flowers on a table. Now, Feyre was not safe, right? Like, he was dreaming of something that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, was this just what she wanted to hear?
Oh, 100%.
And what he was describing, once again, everyone's like, he was dreaming of her like as she was. And I'm like, that's not what the scenario was, though. She was poor.
That wording is manipulative.
Yes, it is.
That wording is, oh, I was dreaming of you and it gave me so much peace because I was the one suffering and not you.
Exactly. And he puts his safety unto her. Yeah. And she all of a sudden has this role of like protector, and it's like a comforting thing. But
which is the same as his nightmare after he refuses to let her talk about what he did to her under the mountain, which we talked about last time. Yep. And he has his whole nightmare and she's pulling him out of it and he's crying to her, oh, these nightmares, and she was gonna take my brothers and da 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 da. So then he's playing the victim when she was the victim.
Yeah. The other time when he kind of contradicts himself is when he says, like, I told Amarantha I want to go to spring for Calamai because I think he's planning something.
Yes.
You know, the curse is almost up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he meets a human girl in
Yeah.
spring and he's like, I didn't know why you were there.
I didn't know
Well,
who she was or why she
why'd you
was there.
think she was there? What'd you think she was doing there?
But I'm also pretty sure he tells her either before or after that. I forget where. I forget what the original story was. But he also says that Amarantha sent him to Spring to see
Again, these are all contradictions.
if Tamlin had found the girl.
Bad. It's all bad.
Can I point something out really quick? I don't know. Yeah. Again, I don't know if we said this last time because I film with a lot of people, but no, I've repeated myself 5 million times at this point. Who cares? But it's good to repeat. Back to the Tamlin and Feyre and Rhys possibly faking the mate bond with her. So this is Tamlin and Akawar, Feyre's point of view. When they winnow back to spring, when he takes her into his arms and winnows back to spring, it says, power smelling of lilac and cedar and the first bits of green swirled around me. And then this one is in Akafas when Rhys comes back from spring from taunting Tamlin and sees her shopping and all of that. And he says, I kissed her cheek, breathing in her lilac and pear scent. They both smell like lilac.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Both smell like lilac. Sarah, Tamlin and Feyre.
So what do you think that the majority of the fandom who are like obsessed with Rhysand will do if it becomes revealed that Rhysand's actually horrible? You think they'll riot? Like, what do you think's gonna happen?
Yeah, they're gonna riot. They're gonna riot. They're just gonna burn up social media.
Yeah.
They're going to call her the worst author. They're going to call her unreliable, all this shit. It's just going to blow up.
Right. And you know what's crazy is that I've been noticing this more and more. People are blaming Sarah J. Maas for Rhysand's problems.
Yeah.
When they're like, well, she didn't write that well enough. And I'm like, or
you just aren't smart enough to understand.
Or like, are you not wanting to think about what's going on here? Right. Yeah. Like I've been seeing that a lot more lately. And I'm like, no, that's
one of my least favorite comments is like, you think too deeply about this. I just read for vibes. Okay, then why are you inserting yourself into this intellectual conversation that you clearly can't have?
100%. And it's like, if you want to read for vibes, and I'm very open about that on my page. I'm like, listen,
whatever.
Go read for vibes. Like, have a good time. I wish I could.
Leave me alone in my intellectual circle.
Or when someone comments on my videos, I'm in enemy territory. I'm like, but commenting is just going to keep you in enemy camp. So stop commenting.
Good on you. Go away.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why you're here.
Be gone. Like, delete.
Right. I'm like, okay. Like, you're
I'm on the
wrong
algorithm. Side of TikTok.
Yeah.
Okay, bye. Like,
so you're commenting, you'd like to stay on the wrong side of TikTok? You know, like it doesn't make any sense to me.
It's crazy. But yeah, I don't see. I know Sarah has said that maybe, big asterisk, she might want to fool around with 2 bonds or like multiple bonds for a person. I know we haven't seen that before.
I would love that.
But like, I could kind of see Tamlin being one of Feyre's mates and Rhys being the other, and then Tamlin also having another mate. So it's kind of like a pick and choose type thing.
Feyre was also 2 people, right? So she was once human, and now she's Fae. So like, does the human person have a different mate than the Fae person? And like, we know that Fae and human can
I love
mix.
that you said that because I was so convinced that Sam and Selena were mates. I was like,
they could have been, right? Like, and I always go back to this like idea of covenant, and like, especially when it comes to Sam.
Yeah.
Sam died. You know, so like, could you have a mate after death, right? Like, I feel like that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
But Feyre kind of died. She literally died, and then she got brought.
Literally died, yeah,
like,
right?
Was she originally Tamlin's mate, and then was like resurrected into something new? And
right?
You know, I think that that's all within the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, she was 2 different people, and I don't know. I just feel like her and Tamlin meshed so well. And listen, if she doesn't want to be with him, I'm not one of these like Tamlin and Feyre shippers have to, you know, whatever, like break up with him. But it just, I almost felt like Akamath made no sense. I was like, this doesn't.
That's why it's my least favorite. I'm like, it's a retcon trash fire.
I don't like it.
I don't like
that
book.
You know? Yeah.
But see, I think like talking about ACOTAR first, but like I feel like Lucian and Jasminda should have been mates. I feel like Lucian should have been gifted a second mate because of everything that he sacrificed for the curse and all of this, like by the mother, right? Because isn't that really the thing with the mother? Like she gifted them powers in the cauldron, she gifted whatever. So I don't know. I love the wording where it says the cauldron gifted something to Elaine. We still don't know what that is. I like to think that that was Lucien.
I think that would be nice too for Lucien.
Because he was so adamant that Jasminda was his mate and that the bond was going to snap after, they eloped or whatever, because he was going to elope with her. Which could be true, because as we know, Vivian and Callias, it didn't snap until they got married.
Right.
Right. And there, I guess there's the whole thing with, oh, well, he's high fae and she's lesser fae, but I don't think it really works differently because we haven't really gotten that. But I don't know. I think it would have been better for him to have actually, been through losing his mate and all this stuff. And it makes more sense to me because the way he was so self-sacrificial, especially for Feyre under the mountain, where he originally didn't really like her that much. She's just a human. Yes, I guess you could make the argument he was doing it for the curse, but he really wasn't doing it for the curse. He said, go left for the worm, and then he refused to give her name just because he knew that as a human, that was important to her not to give her name. He got lashed for that, unconscious, and punished consistently for protecting her under the mountain. And I feel like he did this because he knew that Tamlin thought that Feyre was going to be his mate. And he knew what it was like to lose a mate. He didn't want Tamlin, with everything he's already gone through, to have to feel that, to see her die in front of him, just like Jasminda.
Oh God, that's so sad, but it makes so much sense. I also think that it would make sense why the curse had to be broken by Feyre, because it was on Tamlin, right? Like it would just make sense. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. I just felt like it. Actually, the first book is probably my favorite book.
It is, yeah.
It just makes the most sense to me. And then we get this bat boy that just swoops in, and I swear, I just feel like
weird.
I think I said this last time.
Her personality changes to become Rhys 2.0.
Right. And I just feel like when I think about, if I'm thinking of what I imagine the Fey realm to be, I imagine something like Spring Court.
Yeah.
I imagine the greenery, the maples.
Yeah, it's the most fairy. It's the most ethereal.
Right. But then we get to the Night Court, and I'm like, this is bats. And I know we keep joking about the vampire thing. They're dark, right?
It's like hell.
100%. It just doesn't
cough, Crescent City.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. But, it just doesn't feel like the fairy realm. It feels like something different. And, to use something that Cassian says about Rhys, it feels otherworldly.
Yeah.
And that goes back into that whole
his otherworldly power, his otherworldly power, his otherworldly power. Right. I was like, Valg, hello.
Right.
World walkers, wayfarers, hello. Why is this even a question? You know?
100%.
It's I don't know. It's just crazy. I wish that there was some sort of confirmation that Jasminda had been his mate. I feel like it would be nice for Elaine to give him that closure as a seer.
Okay. That would be nice.
I think that would be nice.
I also think it kind of makes sense for them to be mates.
Yeah, it does.
With the whole, she's a seer, he got that weird eye that sees things. It kind of, that makes sense to me.
I literally told you, me and Teresa did this whole illusion mirror crazy episode, and it's crazy.
Nessian doesn't make sense to me.
They don't. Nessian has next to nothing, and Aleutian has everything in these books. And then Faizan, you have wishy-washy, is it not weirdness. So I'm I don't know if she did this on purpose to have each mate bond be different, a sliding scale of morality. I don't know. But yeah, I'm maybe they could have two mates. We'll see.
I would love for that to be the case. And just to play around with the idea of having choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. If, and going back to Rhys for a second, if there's no sort of I don't know if reconciliation is the right word, but if something doesn't happen where it's, Rhys, you were an asshole 98% of these books. You never, and again, I just did this whole thing on chapter 54. You never even apologized.
Nope. He apologizes twice in the entire series, and I know both times. He apologizes for the forced kiss under the mountain. Only the kiss. That's it. Just the kiss during Starfall. When, he's like, I always regret that kiss under the mountain because I know it was bad and da-da-da-da-da. Nothing else, Rhys?
Yeah. Nothing else under the mountain that you regret?
And he apologizes to Mor after, screwing her over with Keir and Eris and all of that.
Right.
And whatever. But Amren kind of yelled at him first. So I don't know if I can really say that was a genuine sorry, but he was definitely afraid of Amren. But those are the only 2 times in the entire series he apologizes. Tamlin, all the time.
Oh, Tamlin's just throwing him right. 100%.
So I hate those comments that are like, Rhys apologizes all the time and Tamlin never did. And I was like, you have that totally flipped.
I also will die on this hill. Tamlin never hit her.
No, he did not.
And like, listen, I'm not going to excuse, he had a panic attack, whatever was going on. He did hurt her, but he didn't hit her.
He didn't hurt her though. She shielded herself.
Put the shield, and then the one time she didn't, it was intentional.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So again, that's a manipulation.
Right.
Which is reactive abuse, where she was abusing him that time to 100%. Get him to react to play his victim.
Yes. That's like that whole thing. I saw this whole TikTok video about 6 months ago. It was really interesting. Like when you see a woman who's like, and this actually goes back to like the Gabby Petito thing, right? Like this just happened. Like, she was, he was like, she was pushing me over the edge. And it was like, or were you making her crazy? Right? Like that's, the whole like gaslighting thing.
Yeah.
And she does that to Tamlin. And, but when people are like, how do you explain Tamlin hitting her? I'm like, that never happened.
He threw a table at her. He threw her out the window. He
did not do that. And
all this shit.
And I'm not saying what happened was right, but what I am saying is if we're going to talk about it, you have to talk about it accurately. And like,
and you have to keep that energy with all of them. With Tamlin, Feyre, Rhys, they all explode.
I actually think the worst thing that Tamlin did, and it's a bad one, is lying and abducting her into Prithian. Nobody ever wants to talk about that. Like, and I know he had to break the curse, but he did kidnap her. Like, and I get it. Like, there was the curse and all of that. But everybody's like, he threw a table. I'm like, you're obsessed with something that didn't happen. Meanwhile, he kidnapped her. And you're like,
I don't mind the kidnapping thing, honestly.
Okay.
Because, so Feyre murders his friend, skins his friend, whatever. She knew that it was a fairy. She admits that she knew that it was a fairy.
That's true.
She didn't care.
Good point.
Right? And then they get to the cabin. And, Tamlin shows up in beast form, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, I could kill you or you could come back. One of Rhysand's type of choices.
Right. Illusion of choice.
Took a page out of that book, buddy. But then, part of Amaranth's curse is that he literally couldn't talk about it. So he's probably looking at this human who's hates him, terrified of him, also wants him dead. And he's like, I literally have no way to explain this. Other than, oh, you broke a law.
Trust me, I can explain if I could. Right.
I'm like, I guess I'll say she broke a law and she has to come with me.
No, and I totally, listen, it's not, I don't, when everybody brings up all the things that Tamlin did, I honestly don't think he did anything that, but I'm just saying, out of all the things that people complain about, I'm like, you're nitpicking stuff that, that really shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so
overall, and like, again, I don't really care about the kidnapping. It made the story happen, but
I mean, Feyre packed up and took her time and then got on horse. So, was it really kidnapping, or was she like, save me from these bitches?
Yeah, true too. 100%.
She acted really upset for someone who wasn't really that upset.
Right. No, and I totally get that. It's just when people are like, Tamlin said nice hair. I'm like, that's what you're deciding was the, like.
I thought that was cute. I was like, he's so awkward, but he's so powerful. But he's like this little nerd. Like,
I know. I don't know how to
flirt.
I thought he was cute. I'll always be a Tamlin girl. Like, the
worst thing that I think he did that I really hate bringing up so much, but I guess you can say it's only, a secondhand account, is when Lucien tells us that he killed all the guards that were at the manor when Mor took her. I was like, fuck. I was like, God damn it, Lucien, keep your mouth shut.
Now, in Tamlin's defense.
Like, in his defense, they didn't do their jobs.
Right. So, I'm just saying, in a world of real governments, I feel like that would have happened. Now, again, I don't think that anybody should just be killing people, but I'm saying, I'm not surprised that happened. And again, he killed his guards. Okay. Yeah. There's this whole scene in chapter 54. I got the notes.
Pull up the receipts.
Page 524. I got the receipts. Rhysand's like, all the killing I had to do for Amarantha. I'm like, you didn't even like her regime. You were still killing people. You were a collaborator. Liar, liar.
He let her think that Hewn City was his court. He let her slaughter half of them.
Yeah.
And then what does he do after Under the Mountain? He goes up to Illyria, kills everybody that bowed to her, just like him.
And he always says, like, I wanted to protect my people. I'm like, no, you didn't want to protect your court. You wanted to protect Valaris, which is 1/3 of your court.
Yeah.
So I did a little deep dive.
I'm like, how many guards did he kill, though?
Right. I mentioned it was like 2. Like, the guys outside the door.
Probably 2 dudes.
The doorman. He killed the doorman.
Which is funny because Moore is like, oh, you're glad that they're not going to die. I just put them into a deep sleep, which, is that part of your truth power, Moore, again? You can put people into a deep sleep now?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. I did a deep dive into the word Valaris. Have you ever looked it up?
I don't think I have. Like, all the names. I don't think I have, actually, for Valaris, because I was like, I don't give a fuck.
So, this is going to be a little bit of a tangent.
Oh, boy, let me see.
So, Valaris comes from the Latin for, like, veiled city, or, like, a curtain or a veil.
Of course.
And, at first glance, it's kind of like, oh, that makes sense, because it's a veiled city, right? Like, no one knows it's there. But what if?
But...
What if we're actually supposed to see this as a theatrical event?
Hidden or veiled, yeah.
Like, it's not so much that it's hidden, or is it all a stage for Feyre? Like,
I will always say, and this pisses me off.
You just growled. You're like a fae who's upset.
I'm like, this pisses me off, though. When people talk about him shielding her in this house, and I know we've been over this, but the wards that Tamlin put around the manor are the same wards around Valaris.
Yeah.
Protecting it from enemies.
Yeah.
And not only that, when they get to Valaris, there's a quote that Rhys says that, oh, you'll always be free here. You can always roam wherever you want here. Yeah, because no one knows this exists.
Yeah.
Hello? Tamlin didn't have a hidden city to hide her in from Hybern, but
it's even funny when Rhys says things like, Valaris is known for the arts. I'm like, to who? No one.
you and your
right?
circle.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And Feyre's like, wow, what an artistic place. And I'm like, homegirl, he just told you this place is hidden. Like,
and then in Akawar, he's like, oh, don't go anywhere like without an escort. Excuse me? Excuse me?
And like, okay, so Tamlin put Feyre in. First of all, you would never have to convince me not to leave the manor. Like, you want me to hang out in this manor with books, paint, and wine? Say less.
Sign me up.
I had no intention of going outside. You know what I mean? You gotta protect the outside from me. But,
I don't want to get mauled by monsters. Go
ahead. Yeah, no thanks. I'm good. But Rhysand like puts her in that bubble when she's pregnant. Like, isn't that kind of the same?
That was my next point. Yeah.
Thing, like, and I understand that they're supposed to be foils of each other, but I'm like, everything that everybody says Tamlin did or does, I'm like, Rhys does tenfold worse, but veils it in flowery language. That
exactly manipulative. Rhys is the most cunning High Lord, like we said last time.
Did you see Books and Candy did a whole thing on the word cunning?
No, I don't think I saw that one.
I'll tag you on TikTok. It was a very good video. She got into like the whole concept of like, what is like, why cunning? Like.
Also, I just thought it was really funny that you're like, oh, you growled because I also have canines.
Oh wow, I think I got canines, but they're very tiny.
But yeah, so he puts her in that bubble. There's a quote from the Rhysand bonus chapter, and I'm pulling it up right now. I'm scrolling.
That dumpster fire.
Yeah, there's actually like a lot in it that I haven't really paid attention to because I only read it maybe like twice. Where I was like, oh, them. Okay, here it is. Now, tell me how you think Feyre should have reacted to this. Okay?
I'm ready.
You look happy, he said, his smile soft and tender in a way so few in the world beyond Valaris ever saw. I am happy, I said. I'm happy that our family can share in our joy. Regardless of how difficult my relationship with Nesta had become, it had lightened something in my chest when she congratulated us. And then Rhys, off of that happy conversation, mind you, says, if you think I'm overprotective, he said, his dark hair sliding over his face, then just wait until Moore comes home from Balahan. You will never leave this house without an escort.
Right. Like,
Second time he said that.
and after she has the baby in Silver Flame, remember they don't let her leave without more, and the bad boys are always flying overhead.
So she says, I thought Azriel and Cassian would be the ones to worry about. And he says, oh, they'll be bad, but Mor will probably add a second shield to you and check in 6 times a day to make sure you're eating and sleeping enough. Second shield, too.
How doesn't that annoy her?
Like, she groaned, Mother, spare me.
That's, oh God.
And then she was like, I took in his elegant face. Meh. And then she was like, Cassian said you've been moody. Why? And then, of course, he like lies to her at the fucking ass.
Well, that's when people say that he never actually lied. I'm like, yeah, did you read the bonus chapter? Because he kind of did. And they're like, that's not canon. I'm like, okay, well.
Okay, well, if keeping information from someone isn't lying, then what is? Like,
Right, it's a live omission.
Yeah.
Like, there's a word for it. There's a term for it. Yeah.
She says, I believed Cassian, but Rhys hadn't been moody around me at all. Whenever he looked at me lately, only pure love gleamed in his eyes. And then she goes into the conception, which I don't need to read that again, Feyre. And then, which is the part I forgot, is that tell me if you think Rhys sent her this, because I think it's a little bit sketchy. She says, despite the upswell of complicated emotions this daily work had sparked in me, which she's talking about her art studio, but work, because you're not getting paid, but whatever. It had proved gratifying in a way I'd never anticipated, in a way all my considerable magic had never made me feel. Okay. There was the only thing to do with those feelings was to paint them out. And then she talks about a nightmare that she had, which is very interesting. She says, the nightmare had left me off balance the entire day, lingering in my mind like some sort of bruise.
Purple. Oh, you mean like the remnants of the talons that you felt after he left in the first Akatar book? Oh, okay.
I'd been back under the mountain, once more facing my second trial, those jagged spikes descending to impale me if I did not pick the correct lever in time. I somehow became illiterate again, unable to decipher the markings on the wall, forced to pick my salvation or doom at random. Rhys had saved me then, but in this dream he was not there. Only Amarantha had been present, the King of Hybern a shadow behind her, and somehow no one knew where I was, that I'd been dragged back here because she'd learned I'd somehow cheated my way out the first time, and I'd never escape, never escape, never escape. That was the last thought I had before forcing myself awake, damp with sweat, my heart thundering in my chest. Rhys had stirred, tucking me into his side, his wings sweeping over us both, and though I cuddled into his warmth and strength, true sleep had not found me again.
Yeah, he's doing that, Sarah.
Like,
he has to be. Like,
is this just making her still need him? Like,
or she's still suffering from PTSD. You know, there's a lot.
She hasn't had a moment to even think about it, process it until now.
And there's a very real thing where, like, it takes years to recover sometimes. And, you know, is she going to wake up in like a few books and be like, what am I doing here? You know, like.
Yeah. But I found that was interesting, again, because of the lingering bruise. Weird. But then I found it interesting again because this is after the conversation of him being like, oh, Mor will put a second shield on you. You're going to need an escort. Da, da, da. And her last thought is, I'll never escape.
That's scary.
Is that real Feyre in there somewhere? Knock, knock. Where are you? Like, because I honestly did not mind book 1 Feyre. Like, she was a little bit naive and, you know.
I didn't mind her either. I thought that she was naive and young, but I thought that was part of she didn't know anything.
Yeah, but she was herself. She had her own morals and her own thoughts. Right. And like, you know? And now she's just like, I don't know. Well, she's like a shell of Rhys.
She doesn't have any, she has hubris, right? Yeah. So she's too pompous. Yeah. She was like, I'm the High Lady of the Night Court. And I'm like, okay, like 2 weeks ago, you didn't know how to close doors correctly. So maybe slow down, like pump the brakes a little bit. It's her overconfidence that started to drive me really crazy. I had that same problem with Aelin, where I'm like, Aelin, you literally don't know anything about politics. So why don't you sit down? Because you're like, you were an assassin. Cool. Like if I need help killing somebody.
Everyone hates Darrow. And I'm like, but Darrow was right.
Like, 100%.
He was right, though. Like,
I was reading that whole scene.
In here and tell me what to fucking do. You're like an 18-year-old with
I was reading that scene like he's the only one who has any like.
And they're like, bow to your queen. I'd be like, the fuck I am.
Yeah, like who are you? You were a child. And like not only that, I have this like, how do they know she's queen? How do they know
literally?
like the
Literally,
lost
no
princess.
DNA
Like, you know how like
test.
no one knew what happened to Princess Anastasia? Like,
Yeah.
you
There's
know,
no DNA test. Who knows?
right. Like, I'm like,
I just
I didn't know that that's
Oh,
her.
it's the Ash River eyes. That's how they knew.
Okay, green eyes. Yeah, like throw a stone into a population, you'll hit another one. Like,
But like I find it really interesting because I was having I forget whether it was with Teresa or someone else for the chat, but I was going back and forth and someone said that they thought that this was like Nyx's power
oh,
because because she found out she was pregnant the next day after that nightmare. Because well, they woke up apparently and her scent hadn't changed or whatever. And then Rhys meets her at the art studio later that evening and her scent had changed. And that's when, they were crying and then they obviously had sex in the art studio
that's
and
what
all
they
that
do.
stuff. And I'm like, hmm. And he was babbling the word baby. So I was like, huh. Like I think I said this. I don't want Nyx to be super powerful. I told you I want him to be a scholar.
I am curious if, like, what would you do if you had a bad seed? Like a child who was like Damien, like, right, like the Omen. Like what was, oh my God, was it the Omen? I think it is the Omen where like, and even like Rosemary's Baby, right? And this
Yeah.
reminded me a lot of that, where they weren't telling Feyre
Mm.
about the demon, like the
Yeah.
the baby has claws and wings, right? So like this is
That
kind
happens
of
in
like
Charmed too with Phoebe's baby. It's like the Satan's baby, and then like
right,
it's
like
fucking with her and all this shit.
right. So what if there's what if
No, I
Nyx
don't
is
want to think of that.
no 100% like you never
I
want to think of
know,
a child
but
being like
like,
that, but that's like
but that's a really dark idea.
as well if Rhys is Valg,
I know.
that child would be part of it. And like, that's a very
No.
scary, and I don't think that that's where this is going to go, but that does, there's a question there.
That's why people were saying, oh, well, technically Dorian was already half Valg because his father was possessed when he was conceived and all of this stuff. And that's why they think his brother Holland was so terrible. Have you read about
Oh,
Holland?
I read that he's a nightmare, but like we haven't met him.
Yeah.
We ever
So
meet
they're
him?
like, oh, Holland got most of the Valg traits.
Okay.
So I was like,
Yeah, it's like whenever that kid's like on his way home, everyone's like, oh God, everyone has to leave the castle right now.
yeah.
So
And like his mom got him like a circus or something for his party and wanted to just kill all the animals or something. I was like, what the fuck? What
oh,
the hell?
like, oh
Like,
my God.
just a passing line from Sarah J. Maas. I was like, this kid is a literal terror. Like, what is happening?
This kid
And
needs
everyone's like, yeah,
severe
Holland
therapy.
was Valg. I was like, oh, creepy.
I was like, oh, that makes all of a sudden like so much
That
sense.
makes so much sense because like he didn't even have to have like the powers of the Valg because they were human, but just the fact that you can have inherent evil
Hmm.
is like,
I don't, I'm not a big fan of saying anyone's inherently evil.
yeah,
I also, this was actually something, again, in analyzing parts of Akamath.
yeah.
There's a lot of parts where Rhysand's actually mad at Tamlin's dad. And I feel like he kind of takes it out on Tamlin, where I'm like, do you actually have beef with Tamlin, or like, are you just pissed off at Tamlin's dad? And I do have a very
Tamlin
serious
also hated his
problem.
dad. Like,
Right. Like, yeah, that guy
hello.
was a total nightmare. I
Yeah,
agree with you, Rhys.
yeah,
But like, I do have a problem with that whole like sins of the father being passed down to the child because
yeah. I hate that.
like, no, everybody has free will. You
Yeah.
decide how you want. Like,
Mhm.
Feyre's parents were totally horrific.
Like
Like,
Tamlin literally says that I don't want to be like my father.
right.
Like you're not, and so
Well,
then you make.
Rhysand's shaping up to be like his dad.
I know.
And I'm
It's
like,
so hypocritical, and he
yeah,
doesn't think he is. And the
yeah,
fact that Moore is like, your mom tried to keep you out of your father's clutches. I was like, that is a big line right there.
yeah.
And
Clutches.
and especially when we realized that Rhys wasn't born with the wings, he manifested them as a child. And then his mom sent him to Windhaven. So I was like, did he manifest his wings to somehow get away from his father, knowing that his mother would try to like teach him to fly and all of this stuff, and he would get to spend more time with his mother?
Yeah.
Because it was weird to me where they were like, oh, with his otherworldly magic, he manifested wings. I was like, so, like, genetically, yes, he's half Illyrian, but he wasn't born Illyrian. He was just born High Fae. He only manifested the wings with his High Fae powers.
Is that why he could like put them away? Like,
Yeah, that's why he can put them away whenever he wants, and
okay.
no one else can. So I'm like,
Okay.
so you weren't actually born like with Illyrian traits. You just manifested them
That's really weird.
to be like
Have you
your
ever
mom.
thought how like this is just like a silly conversation, but how inconvenient having huge wings all the time would be.
He says that. He says, "Oh, in the winter, I'm so glad I can put them away," unlike Azriel and Cassian who have to deal with the frigid cold,
Really knocking into
making
stuff.
them tight and all that. And
Right.
I was like, first of all, what a dick thing to say.
Right. Like
Which
so
goes
funny.
back to him hiding them under the mountain, meanwhile letting Amarantha rip off the Blue Fairy's wings. Like after that was literally his trauma from his family.
So wait a minute. Speaking of Amaranth Under the Mountain and Rhysand,
Yeah.
he goes on this whole rant how he was like, Amarantha had no idea who I truly was. And I'm like, and he even says she just knew it was the High Lord of the Night Court. I was like, okay, but she knew the old High Lord of the Night Court.
He contradicts himself again with that.
Right. I'm like, that's what I'm saying. That was one of the other contradictions. I'm like, wait a minute, does she or does she not know you? And not only that, she definitely knew you. And
during the first war,
she shot ash arrows or like spiked you with
there were ash bolts in his wings
like,
the first time she caught him.
Right. I'm like, this guy just contradicts himself like 10 times. I'm like,
which I think I told you. I was like, first of all, why didn't more stop that from happening either time? Hello, Morgan. You're like, oh, he's gonna be dead. Crap, he's not. Like,
right. And like, I'm just imagining like the entire time reading chapter 54, like as he's talking, like every few paragraphs, Faye would be like, I just stared into the soup.
Right, he just keeps talking.
I'm like, this guy's just rambling and you're just like stirring soup. I'm like, the whole scene is so. And then at the end of that scene, not to keep ranting about the scene, but I just did a deep dive. When at the very end, he just said all of this stuff. You don't have a question. You don't say, wait a minute, you contradicted yourself.
You told me this before.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Of course not, because he's in her head.
All of a sudden, all she says at the end is, you love me? And he's like,
good
yeah.
soup.
She's like, yeah. Like, you ignored everything just because he said he loved you, which actually
I know
is very depressing.
That's so sad.
Because like all she wanted was like love. And like she has this guy say, I love you. And she's like, that's it. I'm hooked.
Like Tamlin said he loved her, but then she was like, oh, well, Tamlin can't read my mind and he doesn't know what I want. Yeah, Rhys only does because he can read your mind.
Rhys only knows exactly what you want because he's reading your mind. He is the perfect. It's like Rhys is Mel Gibson in What Women Want. Like he knows exactly, you know, that scene where he's with who's the one who won the Oscar for My Cousin Vinny? I forget what her name is.
I have no idea.
But they're like, they're about to sleep together. And he's like, great, because he's reading her
mind. Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
And also, he does straight up lie to her in the bonus chapter. I don't know who said he didn't, because he does.
Oh, he does completely. He just, nothing's wrong. You're just going to die.
Why did Cassian? Yeah. Like, why did Cassian say you've been so moody? He closed his mouth around my breast. No reason. Liar. Tell me. And then again, he just ignores her and distracts her with sex. She says liar, and then she says tell me. Completely ignores her.
Well, like, he does that a lot.
Yeah.
Right? He actually
every time.
Again, this is another instance of him weaponizing his sexuality.
Yep.
He even says in the very beginning of Silver Flame, when he's talking with Cassian or like their mind talking or whatever, he says like, "Yep, well, me and her were in a fight, so you know what I had to do." Oh, so you just use this as weaponization, right? Like to get women to shut up. Like
that's what Cassian does, and Cassian follows his lead.
I think that the inner circle is just like groomed to weaponize sexuality. Moore does that. Moore, absolutely.
100%.
Right? Like, and even when Feyre goes to Summer with Rhysand, he's like, flirt with Tarquin. Once again, he's grooming her into using
flirting
her
with Cressida. Amren's flirting with Varian. Like,
and Feyre is flirting with Tamlin at the beginning of Akamath. In order to and like kind of making it look like she's actually flirting with Lucian to get Tamlin upset. Like, so there's like this
it's icky.
Like weaponized sexuality, and it's very uncomfortable, right? When you think about it, it's like, oh, what are you doing there?
That's like one thing that I appreciate about Elaine is she's like, no. No, I'm just not gonna do that.
No, I agree. I like that she's not. It's actually one thing. There was this interview with Sarah J. Maas. Again, I don't pay any attention to what Sarah J. Maas really says, but she was like, Azriel, I think he's gonna be a freak. And I'm like, there's a part of me that feels really icky about seeing Elaine be with a man because we've infantilized her so much that like
I hate that. But they do that with Gwen too. And they're like, oh, they can't because they're trauma. And I was like, they're grown women.
They're grown women. Like, we have to pick a side. Like, is she a baby? Otherwise, if she is, I don't want to see it. And if she's not, like, the characters need to start respecting that. And like, allowing her to be.
But Sarah sows this in different conversations too. Because Cassian, I don't know if again, I don't know if I said this last time, but Cassian says like, "Oh, she's like a girl to me" about Gwen, but Gwen's older than Nesta. So
That's
like,
so disturbing. Yeah.
Gwen's 28, Nesta's 25, and Cassian literally says she's like a girl to me.
It is so weird that all these characters are younger than me. Like when you say that out loud, I'm like, send me to Prithian. With like martinis and a
Like,
couple copies of Cosmo. I'll have these like women in shape. Like
honestly, I have let me plug my phone in. The quotes of every time Rhys's Valg came out.
oh, the bell comes out.
Every single one, and I collected it.
I give you credit. The amount of reading
It
that
was
you
a
do.
doozy. It was a doozy. I am not going to say the ones from the Crescent City 3 bonus chapter because I need your raw, angry opinion on that one.
I'm very excited.
As a
Yes.
whole. Like that's the biggest one, but I'm going to say the other ones because I did like all the quotes or whatever, and then I did a separate one for just like when his eyes turn black. Which is super creepy. Okay, here it is. And I think I put them in order. I think maybe one is out of order or two are out of order, but I tried to put them in order of the books.
Oh yeah.
Because I literally just took the screenshots and I was like, I don't know what chapters these are. So I just kind of put them in. But I already read the first one when he invades her mind and the Talons,
Yep, that's
scrape.
bad. That's what Maeve does.
Exactly.
Talons, like literally the same language.
Mm-hmm. And then you have in her cell under the mountain, the darkness hovered around him and began to writhe and twist and flare as he rose to his feet. I blinked. Not a full shift, you see. Clicking the black razor-sharp talons that had replaced his fingers. Below the knee, darkness stained his skin, but talons also gleamed in lieu of toes. I don't particularly like yielding wholly to my baser side. Indeed, it was still his face, his powerful male body, but flaring out behind him were massive black membranous wings, like a bat's, like the adder's. He tucked them in neatly behind him, but the single claw at the apex peeked over his broad shoulders, horrific, stunning, the face of 1,000 nightmares and dreams. That again useless part of me stirred at the sight, the way the candlelight shone through the wings, illuminating the veins, and bounced off his talons. So I was like, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, that's freaky.
Kind of creepy. During his nightmare, it says, around and around the darkness swirled the beginning and the end of the world. World Walker, Wayfarer.
Oh my god. Oh no.
It says, half a thought scattered the darkness again. His hands still ended in long black talons, and his feet ended in claws too. The wings were out, slumped down behind him, and I wondered how close he'd been to fully shifting into that beast he'd once told me he hated. Valg form.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad.
This is the Hewn City one. Rhysand appeared. He had released the damper on his power, on who he was. Who he was? His power filled the throne room, the castle, the mountain, the world. It had no end and no beginning. Again.
Yeah.
Nothing but the elegant, cruel High Lord the world believed him to be. No wings, no weapons, no sign of the warrior. His hands were in his pockets, his black tunic seeming to gobble up the light. On his head sat a crown of stars. No sign of the male who had been drinking on the roof, no sign of the fallen prince kneeling on his bed. The full impact of him threatened to sweep me away. Here was the most powerful High Lord ever born, the face of dreams and nightmares.
That's bad. I don't like that at all.
Yep. Yep.
Dreams
And then
nightmares.
And then this was in, I think, the camps in Aka War. Says, darkness blotted out the stars in his eyes. The darkness of assassins and thieves. The darkness of uncompromising death. And then later on it says, I could have sworn the war camp shuddered at the power that rumbled awake, the wrath. Come on.
Yeah, it's bad.
Come on. Before the cauldrons, the beast form Rhys had kept hidden, never liked to unleash unless it was dire to do so. Before the cauldron swept me away, I beheld what happened to his head and his face. It was a thing of nightmares, nothing human or fey in it. It was a creature that lived in black pits and only emerged at night to hunt and feast, which we actually see during the Blood Rite too. It was like, oh, the creatures at night came out to hunt and feast or whatever. Like,
yeah, that's interesting.
The face. It was those creatures that had been carved into the rock of the court of nightmares that made up his throne. The throne not only a representation of his power, but of what lurked within him. And with the wings, ... Hybern began fleeing. I forgot the Tarquin one, but there's one where Tarquin is, I think I said, is chewing her out, and she says, "Oh, he was too far lost in that beast to do anything but growl." Still, he had a hard time coming out of it.
Like all of this, again, like I feel like this is all circumstantial evidence, right? But circumstantial evidence is still evidence.
Evidence, yeah.
And eventually, like, this all has to mean something, right? I don't know. I feel like it has to.
And then we have the Nesta one, which we all know by now, the Nesta
Yeah.
one. Cassian. Okay, and this is Cassian's POV, people. Not Nesta's. Cassian's POV. Cassian. Rhys's voice was a thing of nightmares, of the darkness between the stars. Which, keep an eye out for that quote in Crescent City. Can you highlight that quote in Crescent City every time you see it?
Okay.
Because I need to know. Darkness between the stars.
I'm going to write that down actually right now.
They say it a lot. Cassian froze at that voice he'd so rarely heard and never once directed at himself. What happened? Rhys's face was wholly calm, but death, black, raging death, lay in his eyes. Not a star or a shimmer of violet remained. Hello. Holy black.
Oh, no.
Rhys said in that voice that was like hell embodied. Nesta saw fit to inform Feyre of the risk to her and the babe. His heart began thundering, even as it splintered. Rhys held his stare, and it was all Cassian could do to weather it. As his brother, his High Lord, said, "Get Nesta out of this city right now." His power rumbled in the room like a rising storm before I fucking kill her. What? And then this is also Akasif when, he's telling Nesta, "Oh, be nice to Gwen," in her mind, right? And it says, "The thing that stood beyond the fortress of her mind was a creature of claws, scales, and teeth. It was veiled from sight beneath writhing shadows and the occasional passing star glinting in the darkness. Darkness between the stars. But every now and then, a glimpse of a wing or talon shone. Mind your own business." She slammed the small viewing hole shut.
Oh, God.
And then there's, oh my God, and then there's so many in the CC bonus chapter. There's so many. It's crazy. But can I point out that, is this the, hold on. I had one with, let me pull it up. I have a highlight of this. I have a highlight. Hold on. I'll find it. I'll find it. Okay. So in a voice that sounded like hell embodied, that's what Cassian said, right? This is a little snippet from Kingdom of Ash. This is Maeve. Maeve hummed to herself. "Do you see what I can do, what they are powerless against?" Which, Rhys at the High Lords meeting, "I can make you and all your armies fight for me," right?
Yeah.
Rowan screamed louder, tendons in his neck bulging, fighting Maeve with all he had. She couldn't endure it, couldn't stand it. There was no illusion, no spun dream. Their pain was real. Maeve's Valg powers at last revealed. The same hellish power that the Valg princes possess. Yep. But then it also says the same power she endured and defeated with flame. Yeah. "If you want proof that we are not scheming with Hybern," Rhysand said blandly to them, "consider the fact that it would be far less time-consuming to slice into your minds and make you do my bidding."
Yeah, that's bad. Like, there's just so much.
There's
oh my gosh.
There's just so much. And the one from Akathas again. "I want to jump ahead to next week. Sure, that power of yours can't do it for you." I leveled a dry look at Cassian. He just gave me a cocky grin back. "Never stop being grateful for them. My friends, my family, who looked at that power of mine and didn't balk, did not become scented with fear. Yes, I could scare the shit out of them, but we all did that to each other." Really though? Like,
yeah, he's something else. He's not just saying something else is going on there.
Like, there's a reason Nesta's Blades hates you. Come on. Like, come on. And then have you read, I think it's in Tower of Dawn. Have you read Tower of Dawn yet?
No, not yet.
Neither have I. But I do know about this character named Duva, who was possessed by a Valg princess. And she was forced to do all this crazy shit as a Valg princess, and like it really wasn't her. And like she killed her sister and all this shit.
Oh my God, Jesus.
But basically, like, the Valg was dormant for a while, and then it just, like, took over her. Because they forced the ring on her finger.
That's what I think is going to happen with Rhys. Is that like I don't think he's full Valg, but I think
Yeah.
that maybe there's like this dormancy in him that like takes over when something happens.
I think it's like a split personality thing, like Dorian. Like Dorian is
Yes.
possessed. I think it's like
Yeah.
it's more like a split personality thing for Rhys because he was born with it rather than possessed by it.
Right. Okay.
And my favorite Akamath quote is just the biggest clue to me. I am the Dark Lord who stole away the Bride of Spring. I am a demon and a nightmare, and I will meet a bad end.
Like he's saying he's a demon.
He's saying,
You know, like believe people when they say things about themselves. You know what I mean? Like I am a demon and a nightmare. And I analyzed that quote with somebody else. I don't remember who.
yeah.
But think about that. I will meet a bad end.
How do you know?
Is he like
Preparing.
prophesizing his own demise?
I think he knows that his Valg is getting stronger, and eventually they might have to like vanquish him. Especially when you think of like his beef with Tamlin, like, and his tactics that he uses. Because Under the Mountain, he's like, I had to make Tamlin so mad so he would kill Amarantha, right?
Right.
So I'm like, why now is he antagonizing him? Is he antagonizing him so, I don't know, when the time comes, Tamlin will be able to kill him?
Right.
Tamlin, I think he's Aelin's descendant. Aelin defeated Maeve with the flame. We know that Tamlin had Goldrun's ruby, so perhaps he has the actual sword somewhere. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what this is all going to come down to, but I feel like it's a whole Aelin Maeve situation all over again.
I'm hoping so. I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah. And then we have the Blood Oath stuff, which I don't have the exact quote from Tog, but I lifted the context from the wiki. But it says, wiki on blood oaths, it says, due to the profound meaning behind the oath, the process has evolved over time and differs from place to place. Now, if you remember, in Akamath, after the Suriel tells Feyre, oh, the High Lord of Night is your mate, but give him a mouthful of your blood.
Yeah. That looks like a blood oath to me.
So if it differs from place to place, and in Tog, it was the person drinking the blood that was oath to the person, what if it's the other way around in Prythian?
Where
if you offer your blood, then you're trapped with them.
Isn't that kind of the way that how does it, like in True Blood, right? Like if the vampire gives you their blood, you're trapped to them and they could like
Sired, yeah.
Sired.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm like, weird that it had to specify that it differs from place to place.
Yeah.
And then he's drinking Feyre's blood.
Bad news bears.
Yeah. Bad news. And then I did a board on every time Feyre loses her memory about things that have happened to her.
Oh God.
Yeah. So I said, Rhys making people forget and changing memories. It says, when she tricked me out of my powers and left the scraps, it was still more than the others, and I decided to use it to tap into the mind of every Night Court citizen she captured and anyone who might know the truth. I made a web between all of them, actively controlling their minds every second of every day of every decade, to forget about Valaris and forget about Mor and Amren and Cassian and Azriel. Amarantha wanted to know who was close to me, who would kill and torture, but then he says she doesn't know, right?
Right.
And then he says, when you were gone, I found those 3 picks. I broke into their minds, reshaping their lives, their histories, and dragged them before Amarantha. I made them confess to conspiring to find other rebels that night. I made them lie and claim that they hated her. I watched her carve them up while they were still alive, protesting their innocence. I enjoyed it because I knew what they had wanted to do to you, and I knew that it would have paled in comparison to what Amarantha would have done if she found you.
Yep.
The 3 dudes that found out.
Yeah.
You know?
I just read that part.
Yeah, weird. And then obviously the High Lord meeting part that I already said, where he's like, I can slice into your minds. Now this one gets me. This one makes me really angry, actually, every time I read it. This is Akatar. I found Tamlin's eyes. Wide as he crawled toward Amarantha, watching me die and unable to save me while his wounds slowly healed while she still gripped his power. Amarantha had never intended for me to live, never intended to let him go. Amarantha, stop this, Tamlin begged at her feet as he clutched the gaping wound in his chest. Stop. I'm sorry for what I said about Clithia all those years ago, please. And then she says, in Akamath, and when Amarantha had broken me, when she had snapped my bones and made my blood boil in my veins, he just knelt and begged her. He hadn't tried to kill her. He hadn't crawled for me. Yes, he fought for me, but I fought harder for him.
My thing is, what if we don't know this, but Rhysand was actually in Tamlin's mind, preventing him from doing anything? Like, I don't know, like, or even Amarantha was so powerful. How do we know that he wasn't under Bloodbane or something like that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I'm like, so you said that he crawled, and now you're saying, oh, he never crawled. What is happening? You saw him crawl. And then we have this one, which also kind of pisses me off. I was going to vomit. Tamlin, to his credit, looked like he might too. Lucian's face had slackened. She sold out Feyre's family to you, Ianthe, obviously. I had told Ianthe everything about my sisters. She had asked who they were, where they lived, and I had been so stupid, so broken, I had fed her every detail. And then she says, you're insane, I breathed to Tamlin as Varian bared his teeth. Do you hear what you're saying? Hybern turned my sisters into Fae after your bitch of a priestess sold them out. And then he says, perhaps Ianthe's mind was already in Rhysand's thrall. What a tragedy to remain young and beautiful. You're a good actress. I'm sure it runs in your family. I loved that. But, okay, so you go from, all right, I know that I did this thing, and I'm the one that told Ianthe, to, oh, it's just Ianthe's fault. And then she jumps to, I made a promise. The promise I'd made to kill the human queens, the king of Hybern, Jurian, and Ianthe for what they did to my sisters.
Yep.
What? What? You keep blaming different people here. What is happening? It all started with you, Feyre.
Yeah.
It all started with you. And then her essay, Under the Mountain, which I also hate. We reached the throne room, and I braced myself to be drugged and disgraced again. But it was Rhysand the crowd looked at, Rhysand whose Lucian's brothers monitored. Amarantha's clear voice rang out over the music, summoning him. And then, don't get me started on what you did to me under the mountain. Rhys went still as I'd ever seen him, as still as the death now beckoning in those eyes. Oh, there's another Death Eyes quote.
Yep, there you go.
Damn, I didn't have that one. Then his chest began to move faster and faster. Across the pillars towering behind him, I could have sworn the shadow of great wings spread. He opened his mouth, leaning forward, and then stopped. Instantly, the shadows, the ragged breathing, and the intensity were gone, a lazy grin returning. We have company. We'll discuss this later. And then when she goes back to Spring as Rhys's spy to destroy them from the inside out, she says, but then again, I had also implied in my own gaps of memory that perhaps I had not received the same creativity or courtesy, that they believed it so easily, that they thought Rhysand would ever force someone, ... I added the insult to the long list of things to repay them for. Bitch. They saw you.
Yeah, like, again, I feel like these are all just other instances of Feyre becoming an unreliable narrator. Just, she doesn't remember things accurately. Or at all.
Like, ever. She doesn't.
It's very depressing.
I also found the quote about Nyx. I forgot that it was in here. See, sometimes I can be clever. I found the one about Nyx. Rhys didn't look at Cassian, obviously, as he whispered, the baby has wings. Joy sparked through Cassian even as the broken whisper and what they could mean made his blood go cold. You're sure? We had an appointment with Maja this morning, or yesterday morning. But he's only a quarter Illyrian. No, he's not, Cassian. And then it says, it was possible, of course, for the baby to have inherited wings, but unlikely given that Rhys himself had been born without them, only conjured them through whatever strange unearthly magic he possessed.
Yeah, wonder what that means. But also, you like conceived the baby while you guys were both flying around. So the baby's actually probably like fully Illyrian, actually. So I don't know.
Yeah, he's 75% Illyrian. And I'll still harp on the fact that when Feyre was screaming at the High Lords to bring Rhys back, Helion is like, doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So what's the consequence then? Because technically it worked.
I think that either Rhys has to be changed somehow. Everything has a price.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you also notice that after Akabor, we actually don't see Rhys use much power. Right? You know how like Feyre inherited power?
Mm.
What if power was
Like,
taken away from Rhys?
I mean, we do in Akasif, which I actually find very interesting because there was that whole idea of that you said about Aelin, I think, in the other episode, how she mentions she has to give off bursts of power, right? Or she'll go
Yeah.
crazy. And Rhys says this in Akasif, I don't have the quote, or I think Azriel actually might mention this. And he's like, oh, I like Azriel walked into the room and Rhys was just shooting off darkness into the halls of
Maybe
the room.
or maybe being, brought back to life actually brought out the Valg. Right? Like
That's what I
more
think. That's what I think.
prominently. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
I think that's what he had to give, the control.
and what's interesting is we're talking about how he wasn't born with lyrium wounds, we manifested them. So there's
Mhm.
already this potential that there's something you're born with that is within you that you kind of have to bring out or that like
Yeah,
lurks beyond the surface. So,
exactly. Yep.
and again, it's all there. Like
Yeah.
it's there.
It was a
And I
really
think it's just keeping
interesting
it together.
scene, and I wish that I screenshotted it because it was like Azriel, and then I'm pretty sure it might have been the one where he was either doing paperwork or Azriel saw like the orrery on his desk or something because he has an orrery like Einar.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Again, World Walker, Wayfarer,
Right,
Starborn,
right. Like
you know?
again, it's there. Like
Right.
but
I
some
just
people don't want to see it. And
yeah,
I
they
hope it becomes very apparent in
oh,
coming books.
it becomes very apparent in the Hofast bonus
I'm
chapter.
excited about that. Yeah.
I'm so okay, you're gonna be highlighting that so much because I highlighted it to death.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Like it's crazy.
I'm
He's just such a suspicious.
yes. But we're supposed to question him too. And like that's why it doesn't make me mad that he's like that. Like I actually like his character. But I like his character for who he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't paint him as the good guy. He's not. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
he's a complex character. And the fact that, we have so many conversations about him, I think speaks to the brilliance of Sarah J. Maas's writing his character.
100%.
And people are like, you're critical of him, you must hate him. I'm like, no, like I don't know when it became impossible to be critical of something and dislike it. The two aren't necessarily, together. Like
Mutually exclusive, yeah.
right.
It's
Um
I just like I don't know. I'm just like, oh my God, is something gonna happen? Like I I think I told you we were kind of going over this idea with both John and Natalie when we interviewed them that like in his crazed Valg whatever, either Nesta's gonna do something or, Dusk reverts to Nesta, Valaris reverts to Nesta. Because I think really the biggest thing that would trigger something like that in Rhys would be if like his safe city reverts to its original court, which isn't actually the Night Court, and then defects to Nesta as its leader.
I would love that.
That I can see that happening, and I can see him losing it. Losing it. And there's this idea that we all kind of collectively had that if the fight comes down to Rhys in his unhinged Valg form and Nesta with her death powers, that it might even be Rhys that serves Cassian's death blow in that
Well,
form.
I do think that we're going to come across a situation where Cassian's going to have to make a decision. If Nesta's actually his mate, you have to choose. You cannot serve two masters, right? Like,
yeah.
So in either your master is the mating bond, which is supposed to be this unbreakable,
Supposed to be,
like whatever,
or your brother,
or yeah, right, like
or your brother,
who's not actually your brother.
not actually your brother.
Okay, so like that's the other thing. Like they're best friends, but there is something about family, and I think that like the way that Rhysand relates Cassian and Azrael as being his brothers, it is different in the way that the Archeruns are sisters because they're actually blood sisters.
Mm-hmm.
It's different,
One more last thing.
Yeah.
Just because it was a part of the Helion and Rhaenys acting. So when we did our interview with Henry, we were talking about, the powers of Tamlin that we haven't seen yet, which you brought up earlier. Like, I don't think we've seen all of his powers and all this. So when Helion said it doesn't work that way, I think what he meant is that collectively, they can't just bring another High Lord back to life. I think it was Tamlin's power. And I say that because what is spring? Spring is rebirth,
Earth,
right?
100%.
Which is why I think he was last, and which is why I think that's the only time Rhys woke up. I think it was
Right.
specifically Tamlin that had to resurrect him. And based on that, I was saying that it's weird that, Rhys had the idea to make the High Lords resurrect Feyre.
Yeah.
So Feyre was technically resurrected because of Rhys. She has a lot of Rhys's bad traits now. Rhys was resurrected by Tamlin, and now he's losing his shit like Tamlin. I'm wondering if bringing someone back gives you like their worst traits as a consequence.
You also, I also think that there just has to be consequence to resurrection.
In period.
Like, because they're not God. Right. Like, and
Yeah.
I always go back to religion because that's
Yeah.
just my
Yeah.
thing. But the only person who was ever resurrected was Jesus.
Yeah.
And and I guess he brought back Lazarus, but like there's something changes because you were dead. You're not the same. Right. Like there has to be something different.
Which is why like necromancy is such a dark power to have.
Right.
Like with hypaxia, which you'll see with hypaxia, it gets really crazy. And it's just like it's always dark, and it's celebrated, but at the same time it's feared.
It's like, have you
never
seen
know what's gonna happen?
Practical Magic?
Mm.
When they bring him back,
Yeah.
and the answer are always like, it's not, we can't, it's going to bring back something dark and unnatural. And that's kind of what
that happens once in Crescent City. You'll see, and it's like, oh my god,
it's like, oh no,
oh no, that is not who I wanted.
You're not supposed to like tempt or change fate. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that that's a very scary thing.
Like the natural order of
right. Like
death.
there is a natural order of things. And I'm not a fan of breaking natural law. Like death is finite. So
yeah,
that's important.
Which is what they had harped on. Like, yeah, we are near immortal, but we're not fully immortal. We can still die.
Right.
And so it's like all of them are like Rhys being brought back twice, Feyre being brought back twice, Nyx being brought back, the Archerons being brought back, Jurian being brought back, Amryn being brought back. The list goes on. And the fact that it's the entire inner circle is weird.
Agreed.
But yet not one friend of Tamlin's could have maybe come back.
Or like,
where is Andrys?
Even Papa Archeron, like everybody was so upset when he died. Like he's just sitting there. All the other High Lords are here. Maybe they put a colonel on this guy who brought his ships. Like, I'm just saying,
Faye
like,
now. Maybe you can make our dad Faye. Like, hello.
Like it's just.
I don't
know.
And I have an issue with. I kind of went off on a rant on TikTok the other day where I was saying how the new editions of the Night Court editions of came out or is coming out on Barnes and Noble, and I was like, they should have had POV bonus chapters for each book that doesn't have a bonus chapter, and it should have been someone completely interesting and a POV that we could have wanted. And my big argument was that for ACOTAR we should have had an Andrys bonus chapter. Like we should have seen what led up to him going over to, seeing Feyre and being like, oh shit, it's me. Right. Like just I think that would be so cool. Like to see, obviously sad, but that would be so cool to like see how he was with Tamlin and Lucien before.
I would have loved it.
And then, because then we could kind of empathize more with the fact that Feyre fucking skinned him. She didn't just shoot him; she skinned him.
Imagine if Feyre had skinned Azriel.
Or I know. Like it was a person.
Yeah.
And it's just awful. And then like the dream she has where she's like, in its place wasn't a wolf, but a man. I had skinned a man. And I was like, oh my God.
It's like, yeah, you're right.
And I still think that Rhys sent her that. I don't know. I think that there's a weird thing with that with Rhys, and especially with her nightmares. It's just like, is he sending these to her?
Right. No, I agree. It's sketchy.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah.
No.
I saw this weird quote the other day where when I was looking through my Kindle app for TikToks, and I forgot to screenshot it, but it made me really mad. And it was with Amryn, I think, in Aka War. And they were all, I think, in the sitting room or something. And it says, like, oh, Rhys had only recently been allowed to question Amryn, or Amryn had only recently allowed Rhys to question her, but it was never a demand, not like this, because he was like, tell us about your time at the prison, remember?
Yeah.
And I was like, she just recently allowed him to question her?
That's so weird.
Yeah, so she freaks me out too, and I think she has a part of the whole Valg thing, but I think she's connected to it. But
She's a fallen angel. She's by definition a demon,
yeah.
right? Like,
yeah.
it's
I've known your family for centuries, even before you were born. Demons meet demons, like
right. They're all
hello.
yeah, 100%.
I've even said that Moore could even be like some sort of. I know I have the theory that she's a witch, but she could have even been like some sort of succubus because she uses her sexuality like that too on men who she's like, I don't even really like, but I sleep with. Yeah. So like, is sleeping with them giving you more power? Like, I don't.
Right.
Especially Helion. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But that was like my little crazy theory. Anyways, I loved chatting with you.
I love chatting too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I literally feel like we could speak all day, and we're just going to repeat ourselves and go around the wreath.
I know.
100 times.
Oh, I know. Anyway, this was a good conversation. Yes. Text me. We'll plan another one. Again,
we'll plan another one.
So let me know.